Everyone knows that to get hired or to keep your job, you need to learn how to use AI, right? But here's the thing. Just prompting ChatGPT at work is not going to cut it. If you want to be among the handful of people that tech companies, investors, and even customers fight over, like a pack of vultures over a tasty morsel, you need to learn a much more important set of AI skills. And that golden AI skill stack, which will future-proof your career or business, is being able to build with AI. In this video, I'll show you the 5 foundational skills that go into learning to build with AI. These skills, which you can develop in several weeks or a few months at the latest, are going to turn your LinkedIn profile into a powerful magnet for recruiters and hiring managers. That's already happening to some of our members in our Vibe Builder Collective. This is a group of program and product managers, mostly non-engineers, who are completing onboarding projects together and learning to build with AI. I'll leave a link for how to join our group in the description below. For all the AI hype, the number of non-engineer tech workers who can understand how to build an app with AI and let alone have done it is teeny tiny, which means there's a huge competitive advantage to be had if you learn how to do it. All right, here are the 5 golden AI building skills. The first skill is AI-assisted development. That is being able to not just vibe code, so to throw any old prompt into the AI coding assistant, but to really develop with requirements first, understanding what you're trying to build, being able to specify it in a way that the coding assistant can understand with no ambiguity and no doubt about everything that goes into it. These things are called specifications, and the product specification requirement document is called PRD. So you need to understand how to build or specify these requirements. And you also need to understand the whole setup, the building blocks of development. So from IDEs to databases to code repositories, different development environments, all that may be overwhelming right now, but it'll very quickly come into your awareness and you'll be able to understand how everything fits together. You also need to be able to effectively prompt engineer the coding assistant. And by that, I mean you need to understand how it behaves. I've shot a lot of videos with Replit Assistant showing you kind of what its default behavior is and how it can introduce mistakes if you're not careful or forget instructions. So you need to understand how to navigate whatever coding assistant you're working with. And you need to be able to control your collaboration with that assistant. The tools that you'll be using are very different depending on kind of the level of involvement you want to have. So the gateway drugs, as I call them, are the Replits, and lovable to a less extent because it doesn't really show you the code building process. It's like a ChatGPT for apps. But Replit for sure is an introductory tool for AI-assisted development. Now, in our Vibe Builders Collective, we had a lot of issues navigating more complex projects with Replit, and that's why we're transitioning to more advanced tools like VS Code, which is the base for development environments like Cursor. Also GitHub, you need to understand how to create your account there and have code repositories in GitHub. Claude Code is the AI development assistant we'll be using going forward. I'll be using for my own projects, as well as GitHub Copilot. And then you need to understand how to work the terminal on your machine. Now, the projects to build, this is super important because really there's no point in reading a lot of textbooks or articles or watching endless YouTube videos. This is probably going to be one of the very few YouTube videos I record that is not going to have you actually sitting down and following along with me as we build things. Building is the only way to learn this. There's no other way. You can't get a certification on it. You can't attend a course and get a check mark. That doesn't matter unless you can actually build something and have it work. You haven't mastered the skill of building with AI. I am structuring 3 onboarding projects. Each of them is going to kind of step up the level of complexity for all the skills gradually. So on the basic side, we'll start with a simple self-contained app that I'm going to have you build in Replit because it'll give you a taste and it'll build confidence. And it's going to be a weather update app that is going to post the update to your weather, wherever you're located, in a Slack channel. We have our own webhook for our own Vibe Builders Slack channel. So if you're part of our collective, you'll be able to post there. And it uses a single API from a free weather service. Next, we go to more advanced projects that add more complexity in the logic and add more external integrations. These are the second and the third onboarding projects. The second one is a meal planning app that integrates an LLM and some APIs. And the third one is going to help you to keep building with AI through a structured process called sprint planning. So it's planning kind of your development cadence, your development cycles. You can do that as part of the collective or on your own, but having a formalized sprint planning dashboard and an app that helps you plan your development cycles is super helpful. And that's the third onboarding project. The second skill in the golden set of 5 key skills is API integration. API stands for Application Programming Interface, and APIs are sets of rules and protocols that allow different software programs to communicate with or talk to each other. In web development, APIs usually define how the front end talks to the back end for different services. And they do that with standardized HTTP requests, like a GET request or a POST request. And that really makes the whole conversation happen in between apps and services online. The ability to connect and orchestrate multiple external services through APIs is a core foundational skill to building with AI. And now the tools are really the same. It's knowing how to get an API key, knowing how to integrate the API key into your app. And we start with 1 to 2 simple APIs per app that are simpler to use and simpler to integrate. And then as we go on the advanced side, we will be working with more complex APIs. APIs can get super complicated. They can get also pretty brittle, meaning that they're not always as robust and their outputs are not always easy to get or easy to get without errors. So the projects that are going to teach you that skill, I really recommend you start with our first onboarding project, which is building that weather update app that posts to Slack. And then for several more complex APIs, you're going to use that in onboarding project 2, which is the meal planning app, and onboarding project 3, the sprint planning dashboard. The third skill is LLM integration. You will be using LLMs to help you to produce code to build the app that you want to build. As a non-engineer, you won't be writing code from scratch, but rather you will be reviewing and understanding the code that the LLM assistant is writing. However, in your products, in your apps, you can also have an LLM as part of the product, say a chatbot app that interacts with your clients. And that is a different level of integrating AI into the product itself. It's a really important skill to have. And the tools are really, you can do that. A lot of it can be done in code, like if you're coding in VS Code, but there are specialized orchestration software services out there like N8N, Make.com. And for advanced, there are even more specialized orchestration services like Flowise AI, which then connects to a very important type of service that you need when you're building in LLMs. And that is evaluations, being able to observe how the outputs vary, whether the outputs are on target or not. Because remember, unlike code, LLM outputs are not deterministic. They're probabilistic. And therefore, you need an evaluation strategy and methodology to be able to say, like, what percentage of the time is the LLM giving a result that is perceived as accurate, as helpful, and what percent and what type of errors does it get into when it doesn't. So the projects that we're going to use to build that skill set is the second onboarding project, which is the meal planning app. And then for advanced, I'm currently building a content system for financial service business owners that uses a lot of Flowise AI LLM orchestration. It has a data pipeline, scraping the data on the research side and then transforming that data into different outputs. And so I will be working on more projects like that, and our members of our Vibe Builders Collective will be as well. So if you join our collective and as you follow this channel, I'll be posting more and more advanced building strategies for LLM integration in the future. The fourth skill that you need to master is workflow automation. Now, what does that mean? You've heard about AI agents and you may have heard about automations. This is the process of setting up automatic actions on a schedule or based on a trigger that is received from your app that is used by a user. Say a user wants to plan a meal. They enter their restrictions. They enter the week or the time period they want to plan the meal with. And so that automation or a series of actions then cascade from that to help execute the meal plan. A lot of workflow automations that don't involve LLMs have to do with calendar actions, email actions, reminders, time-based actions, and triggers. And so you need to learn these kind of simple automations, which are tools like Make.com, N8N, which can also be highly sophisticated and complex. And on the advanced side, again, as I mentioned, N8N and Flowise AI. So the third onboarding project really has quite a sophisticated time-based automation, but I would consider it to be a basic automation. It's a series of automations that we build in make.com, but it kind of gives you that introduction to how to build your apps and integrate workflow automations in them. And for more advanced workflow automations, you will be seeing more of that coming out on this YouTube channel and in our Vibe Builders collective as members start building more and more sophisticated apps. The final skill that you'll need to master is production deployment. Now, what is production? If you are new to the whole concept of software development, the code that you build goes through kind of these phases. First, you are developing, or the developers developing the code in a sandbox. This could be on the developer's own laptop or machine, or, in a shared kind of dedicated sandbox environment on a server. Then when they're ready to kind of stage it to go out and merge it into the existing code base, because remember, you can't just merge willy-nilly anything into the code base. As your code base grows, the complexities will grow. The new code will be more risky to integrate because it could break existing logic. And so you need to put it in a staging environment or development environment that is ready to kind of be tested against the code base. And finally, when it's ready to be pushed to production, when it's being tested ahead of time, when we know it's not going to break things ideally, then it goes to production, which is really what the users of your app are interacting with. The live code, the live app, it's sitting on its own dedicated server, set of servers, and has its own production environment. So that is what we are talking about, being able to kind of take code all the way to production, to that stage. Now, going live, the ability for the app to be accessible and maintainable, you need to know how to work with all components of the production deployment, which are these frameworks and tools that help the code transition from, being developed into being in production. Continuous integration, continuous deployment pipeline, CI/CDs, different development environments, which I just explained. IDEs is where you write your code. VS Code and Replit are examples of IDEs. Servers, repositories, again, where does the code live? Where are you taking the code from and merging it into these different environments? Now, this takes building with AI beyond the prototype. The vast majority of what people are building, especially in these no-code apps like Replit and Lovable, are just prototypes. They may not be tested. They may not really be ready for production, and they usually don't have any data passing through them. So they're not being used. They're just an idea that's sketched out, if you want to kind of think about it like that. So now the tools, this is where the complexity really kicks in, because you don't just have to understand how to work with these development tools for developing the code, like VS Code, Claude Code, GitHub, a GitHub Copilot, but now you're starting to get into the kind of process of pushing things to production. So you will need to use a service like Google Cloud, which has Cloud Run, which deploys code, Cloud Build, which automates the building and testing of the code as it goes through the environments. And you'll need a server. So you need a server that actually makes your database available to your users so it can be updated with their actions as they're taking actions in the code. And so on the advanced level, you need to understand how to not just deploy something for your own use or for the use of several people who happen to use it, but you need to understand how to deploy more complex apps to lots of users. So these are enterprise-grade tools, DevOps. You need to not be a DevOps person, but you need to understand the function of DevOps, monitoring. And also, if you have LLMs in your AI app, then you will need these evaluation or eval tools and AI observability tools. Because again, remember, LLMs are probabilistic. They're not deterministic. So when we put a probabilistic thing in our app, in our code, then we need a way to kind of understand it and evaluate it. So the basic introduction to this production deployment inside of Vibe Builders Collective, but also I'll walk you through how to do it in a future YouTube video, is our third onboarding project, which is building a sprint planning dashboard. And again, in the future, I'll also be talking about more involved production deployments. How are you going to learn these skills? First, make sure to subscribe to this YouTube channel and to my Substack, lisasnewsletter.substack.com. And if you subscribe to the paid version of the newsletter, which is like honestly super affordable and is in line with what other people are charging for their paid Substacks, but mine includes the ability to get into a paid Slack community, and we actually support each other with giving each other feedback, testing each other's apps. That's why we have the sprint planning dashboard. And in the future, I might have to increase the price because I'm going to be deploying a production server for everybody's onboarding projects so that you can practice deploying to production as part of the onboarding process. So consider subscribing, and I'll see you there.